There's a number going around right now that sounds like a typo. £22,000 an hour, not a year, an hour. That is what a sitting British politician recently declared he was paid to be the public face of a gold bullion company, roughly £250,000 for what was logged as a handful of hours of brand ambassador work. Parliament's own standards watchdog is now looking into whether it was even declared properly. Sit with that for a second, because it tells you everything about who actually profits when gold and silver prices swing, and it is rarely the person watching the charts at midnight wondering if they should buy the dip. Here's the problem almost every new precious metals buyer runs into. Every time prices fall, the internet fills up with the same message. Back up the truck, this is the buying opportunity of a lifetime. Dealers push it, influencers push it, and now, apparently, politicians push it too for a very generous fee. But nobody in that chorus is explaining the two things that actually decide whether owning gold and silver works out for you. The tax rules quietly changing underneath your feet, and the plain fact that markets do not move in straight lines. You can be completely right about precious metals long term and still get hurt badly by both of those forces if nobody ever explains them to you. That is the gap Hidden Fix Lab wants to fill today, minus the hype. So let's talk about the part almost nobody wants to make a viral video about: capital gains tax. In the United Kingdom, there used to be a tax-free allowance on investment profits that sat above £12,000 a year. Today, that allowance has been cut all the way down to £3,000, and it has been frozen there for years to come. That is not a small trim. It is roughly a 75% reduction in what you can pocket tax-free, achieved through a string of budget decisions rather than one dramatic headline. And the profit above that shrinking allowance is now taxed at 18 or 24% depending on your income. This matters enormously if you are holding physical metals, because the rules that apply the day you bought are not guaranteed to be the rules that apply the day you sell. The goalposts move mid-game, and they tend to move quietly through budget announcements rather than dramatic new laws. This is where the hidden insight comes in, and it has nothing to do with secret vaults or shadowy cabals. The overlooked variable in precious metals investing is not the metal itself. It is the wrapper the metal comes in. Certain coins, specifically legal tender coins produced by a national mint, carry an exemption from capital gains tax in the UK, because they are technically currency, regardless of the gold or silver content. Other products, including plenty of beautifully made bullion bars and even error coins that never should have left the mint, do not carry that same exemption. Two people can own the exact same weight of the exact same metal and face completely different tax outcomes purely because of what shape it was struck into. To understand why this loophole exists at all, it helps to look at where legal tender exemptions came from in the first place. Governments have long drawn a legal line between currency and commodities. Because currency is meant to circulate freely without being taxed every time it changes hands, the same way you're not taxed for spending a £10 note at the shop. Precious metals investors eventually realized that a gold or silver coin stamped with a face value and produced by a national mint technically qualifies as currency under that old logic, even if nobody would ever actually spend a 1-ounce gold coin at the till. That accidental overlap between ancient monetary law and modern bullion investing is the entire reason the exemption exists, and it has quietly shaped how serious collectors and investors structure their holdings for decades. The logic underneath it is simpler than it sounds once you strip away the legal jargon. Tax authorities are not trying to punish bullion investors specifically. They are trying to close revenue gaps, and capital gains on investments are one of the easier places to find that revenue because the data already exists on paper. Meanwhile, currency by its nature is deliberately left alone because taxing it would be like taxing every transaction in the economy. So when you choose a legal tender bullion coin over a private mint bar, you are not exploiting some secret backdoor. You are simply choosing the version of the asset that already sits on the correct side of a distinction tax law drew a long time ago for completely different reasons. Here's where the industry reality gets uncomfortable. Bullion dealers know this distinction extremely well, and it shapes what gets marketed the hardest to newcomers. Flashy limited runs, novelty error coins, and private mint bars often carry the biggest profit margins for the seller, and they are frequently the pieces without any tax exemption at all. None of this requires a conspiracy. It is simply that a business will naturally promote the products that make it the most money, and a brand new buyer scrolling social media has no easy way to tell the difference between a smart, long-term holding and an expensive collectible with a tax bill waiting at the end of it. You can see the same pattern play out in how small resellers behave during a price spike. When silver was climbing hard, plenty of casual sellers bought in at one price and flipped product for a quick profit on resale platforms, riding the wave upward. The moment the price corrected, the same sellers were often stuck holding stock bought at the peak, unable to move it without taking a loss, and publicly frustrated that the market had turned against them. It hadn't turned against anyone, It had simply returned to behaving like every commodity market in history, moving in cycles rather than one-way staircases. The businesses that survived those swings are the ones who priced in volatility from day one instead of assuming the good months were permanent. So what does a sensible, non-hyped approach actually look like in practice? Start by identifying whether the pieces you already own or are considering buying are legal tender coins from a recognized national mint, since that single fact determines your tax exposure more than almost anything else. Keep a simple record of what you paid and when, because if a future sale ever creates a taxable gain, you will need that history, and reconstructing it years later from memory is painful. Before assuming any specific coin or bar is exempt, check current guidance directly from your national tax authority, since these thresholds and rules are revised almost every budget cycle. If you're running this as a business rather than a personal collection, separate your business inventory records from your personal holdings clearly from the start, because mixing the two creates a mess at tax time. And resist the urge to make large purchase or sale decisions purely because a price chart moved sharply in either direction over a few weeks, since short-term volatility tells you very little about the multi-year picture. None of this is a guarantee, and it is not financial or tax advice, just information worth understanding before you make decisions with your own money. Tax rules genuinely do change, sometimes with very little warning, and what is exempt today is not guaranteed to stay that way. Prices genuinely do swing hard in both directions, and anyone telling you a metal only goes up is selling you a story, not a fact. The honest limitation here is that nobody, including seasoned dealers with a decade in the business, can tell you exactly where prices or tax rules will sit 5 years from now. What you can control is whether you understand the rules of the game before you play it, rather than finding out the goalposts moved after you've already made your bet. That £22,000 an hour endorsement deal is not evidence that gold and silver are a guaranteed win. It's evidence that somebody, somewhere, is always making money off the excitement around a price swing, whether that swing goes up or down. The only real edge an ordinary person has is refusing to be the last one to understand how the system actually works. That's the whole point of digging into the unglamorous, unclickable details nobody else bothers explaining, one hidden fix at a time.